right. Chico. You think it easy? You think it easy? Things ain't rosy. It ain't easy. If you manage to survive, you're lucky. Things gone so bad, it gets so hard. What to do, I don't know. I just holding on. Every day go by, I just holding on. Lord knows how I try to deal day. You think it's easy? You think it's easy? Unemployment, more retrenchment, only downturn, hardly any improvement. Pain increasing, it's so frightening. The situation so frustrating, but I'm holding on. Every day go by, I just holding on. Lord knows how I try to deal day. You think it's easy? You think it's easy? The treasury empty, so they tell me. So where they getting all this money they thieving? Place for walking, people sleeping. Put a hand, Lord, do something. Holding on. Every day go by, I just holding on. Lord knows how I try to deal day. You think it's easy? You think it's easy? Friend, I'm willing to run something, but the strain I'm under is overbearing. His wife and children, so you see what's happening. When I get back, me cola check me for something, but right now I'm holding on. Every day go by, I just holding on. Lord knows how I try today, day. All right, get down. Day. You think it's easy? You think it's easy? The treasury empty, so they tell me. So where they getting all this money they thieving? Place for walking, people sleeping. Put a hand, Lord, do something. Holding on. Every day go by, I just holding on. Lord knows how I try to deal day. You think it's easy? You think it's easy? Friend, I'm willing to run something, but the strain I'm under is overbearing. His wife and children, so you see what's happening. When I get back, me cola check me for something, but right now I'm holding on. Every day go by, I just holding on. Lord knows how I try today, day. All right, get down. Day. Yeah. Holding on. Every day. Holding on. Day. Yeah. Holding on. Every day go by, I just holding on. Lord knows how I try. Oh yeah. Get down. Holding on. Yeah. Every day go by. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you. Love you. When I get back, me cola check me for something. But right now I'm holding on. Every day go by. I just holding on. Lord knows how I try. Today, la la la, day, diddle diddle, hey, diddle day. All right, get down. Day, 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 la la la, day, la day, day. Yeah. Holding on. Every day. Holding on. Day, 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 day. Hey, holding on. Every day go by, I'm just holding on. Lord knows how I try. Oh, yeah. Get there. Holding on. Yeah. Every day go by. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You think it's easy? Friend, I'm willing to run something, but this strain and under is overbearing. His wife and children, so you'll see what's happening. When I get back, me cola check me for something, but right now I'm holding on. Every day go by, I'm just holding on. Lord knows how I try. Yeah. Get down. Get it ding 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 ding. Yeah.
Holding on. Holding on. The Baron, the man with the sweetest voice in Kaiso soca. Yesterday, we, of course, played the Baron, singing about the environment. And we got so many requests, especially from the ladies, for some more of the Baron. So a holding on, thing rough. But we holding on. Good evening to you and welcome to Politics 101 on a Thursday night. Big show tonight. Dr. Terrence Campbell is here tonight. Real doctors, real doctors. Dr. Terrence Campbell is here and he's ready. He's backstage and we're going to begin our conversation in a minute. Wherever you're joining us from. Good evening to Georgia, those of you who are joining us from Georgia. Welcome to Politics 101. All of you who are joining us from in Guyana. We are so grateful to have you here every evening because we are doing this thing for our country. We are marching on and we are marching forward because history has placed us in this time, at this moment, and it has given us the task to witness and to see it through. We holding on because as attorney at law Nigel Hughes would say, better must come and better will come. We are always trying to do better. And there are always forces that hold us back. But we keep moving on. Good evening to all of you, the wonderful people from Linden. Welcome to Politics 101 on a Thursday night for people like Ashley, who are up there in England. How about you who are joining us from Canada? I haven't shouted out to you in a little while, but we holding on, all of us holding on. Welcome to Politics 101. All you wonderful people in West Berbice, Quarantine. How about those of you up there in the interior? I got a couple of messages from people in Mahdia. I understand that things in Mahdia are regular. All kind of story going on up there. And next week I'm going to cover. I think, coming to think of it, I think Dr. Campbell is from that side. He's from that side. He's from the interior there. I think he's from the Mahdia. He'll tell us when he comes on. Good evening to all of you. Region 9. Welcome to Politics 101. Tonight we are going to be talking. We're going to be setting some things straight. And Dr. Campbell he has a real doctorate. And he run business. He's not a ground dog, he's an eagle. Teacher George said, watch me. Oh, me soar like an eagle. When me get by my motorbike and me ride, me ride from Cane Grove to Boxing. And me ride, man, fast. When me left Cane Grove, me got pull brakes when me meet Golden Grove. Because if me not pull my brakes at Golden Grove, me fight past Boxing, Demerara River. Teacher George Young, yeah, he was a hell of a chap. He said, you got pulley brakes at Golden Grove, where you fight past Boxing, you end up at the Demerara River. Wonderful. It's so good to be here. It's so good to be here with you. And I am so thankful that I am living in this time. In this time, I would not exchange it for anything, because we are seeing our country in all its dimensions. But we have walked over obstacles before, and we will do this again. Marcus Skinner, welcome to Politics 101. Mr. Godlove, welcome. Lester Beckles, good evening to all of you, and good afternoon to those of you who happen to be on the West Coast. And I noticed Troy is joining us from Dallas, Texas. Good afternoon. I think it's still afternoon in Texas. Good evening, good afternoon to you, my friend Aubrey Paul, who is joining from the Dallas area. Thomas Robertson, Mr. Robertson from Georgia. And Ivor Miller from Tucker, Georgia. Welcome to Politics 101. I was telling my class today, that one of the things about us Caribbean people is that we operate at various levels at the same time. And we must, because we are called upon by history to move mountains and sometimes to move hills. And sometimes we're in the valley and they come down there, the avalanche, and we still have to move them. Welcome to Politics 101. I hear the Vice President said today that they are going to be willingly taking deportees that Mr. Trump is intending to send back. Early o'clock, no hesitation. They're playing politics with America, I hope they see what happened to Pompeo. Trump take away eating. Trump, Pompeo, they give them the thing. Trump may take away the thing from them. No matter how they sprawl out themselves. Cyril, no matter how they sprawl out themselves. This world does walk in mysterious ways. And people who want to see the world in a straight line, take one in. You better take one in. You better do good. You all remember the one? I think that was Eddie Hooper from West Bank. Take one in. Good evening to my sister Desiree, joining from Maryland. And from the Essequibo Coast, Sylvester. Man, you all coming from all over tonight. For you, Terrence. One of the things I like about Guyanese, one of the things I like about we Guyanese, we got a sense of moment. We know the moment. We just get cascas sometimes, but behind the cascasness is a certain kind of balance. Good evening to all of you. And as I mentioned last night, tonight, Terrence Campbell is going to be here. And you all understand, White Terrence is here. As them big man would say in the villages, I say no more. Let me bring in Terrence and let's get going. Dr. Campbell, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
You have to unmute yourself.
But I am unmuted.
Still not hearing you.
Still not hearing me? I am unmuted. You got to do anything on your end?
Still not hearing you.
What about now?
Still not getting you.
Wow.
Dr. Campbell is having some problems with the audio there, but we'll fix it. It'll get fixed.
Anything now?
Still not getting you. Sometimes the technology plays games with her, but he's gonna come back on. Peter Richardson, not Peter Richardson from the Essequibo Coast. Whenever I go to the Essequibo Coast, I always say I'm in a different country. It's a peaceful place, quiet, serene. I always think about that when I'm there on the Essequibo Coast. Let's see if we get Dr.
Are you hearing me now?
Here you go. We get some
Good,
juice.
good.
Yeah. So good evening to you and welcome to Politics 101.
Thank you for having me, your class professor.
Well, you were a professor in your own right too, and you didn't get it honorary. You didn't get it honorary.
Listen, it's 42 years since I sat in Politics 101 with Theo Gittins and Theo Morris at the University of Guyana. And I'm happy to be in Politics 101 again.
I took that Politics 101 in Theo Morris class, and Theo is my countryman.
Boxer man, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I sat in that class 1984. So how long is that now, by?
So I preceded you by 2 years, 1982.
Terrence, you from the interior, I think Madhya area there?
Born at Madhya, left very early when I was about 6 months old and grew up at Queenstown, Essequibo. So pure,
yes.
in other words, I'm pure Essequibian, but born at Madhya, but I consider Queenstown my hometown.
Peter, I understand why you come tonight. Peter Richardson from the Essequibo Coast. And of course,
Richardsons are a well-known family in Queenstown, if it's a Queenstown Richardson.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of friends in Queenstown. The late Clarence Ellis, of course.
That's a cousin. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And of course, Kimani Nehusi and so forth. So
all countrymen. All countrymen. Yeah.
And of course, Queenstown lays claim to be in the real first village.
Proprietary village, because people bought plots. The difference between Queenstown, I think, and Buxton is that the community bought the entire village. Queenstown was the first. So I like to say Queenstown is the birthplace of Afro-Guyanese entrepreneurship, in the sense that it was more individualistic in the purchase, right, as opposed to a community, but entrepreneurship anyway, both sides.
And
both sides.
And you take me into the first question I want to ask you tonight, and that is that you are an entrepreneur, and I notice in your exchange with some people in high places, you made it very clear that in your 20s you were running businesses. And of course, especially for our young people who are on this program, there is the myth. And in any country, there are myths. And there is the myth about some groups are born to be entrepreneurs and some groups are not born to be entrepreneurs. But you says, as you said, individuals bought villages. Of course, individuals also pool their resources together, and in the cooperative movement also bought villages. So, what drove you? What drove you to become an entrepreneur? You know, because when we were growing up, and you know, we are from the same generation. You know, they want us to get an education, go to be a teacher, go work in the civil service, etc. Maybe a doctor, maybe lawyer for some of us. Why entrepreneurship for you?
Well, actually, I went to UG to do law, but
there you go.
It was the times when foreign currency was an issue. So 2 years before me, that would have been the class of 1980 that entered in 1980. The government paid the economic costs for those going on to UE and to UWooden to study law. But that changed after the 1980 class. So the 1981 class, they didn't pay it, but they offered the foreign currency to go. And the rate, I think, was about 3 point something to 1. And by the time I had finished national service in 82, no, that was the 81 class. We started in 82. By the time I finished national service in 83, it was the economic costs had gone and the foreign currency had gone. So it would have meant sourcing funds on the black market, which was about 12 or 13 to 1. And it was beyond the ability of my parents at the time. My father just retired from the public service, and I remember us totaling up the money. And it would take me through Barbados, but it would not take me on to Trinidad. And I remember saying to my parents, listen, forget it. I said, because I'm your only child. And if I cross the road and a car knock me down, is everything gone with that investment? So let's forget this. So that was a time of the traders, and it was a time of great Afro-Guyanese entrepreneurship because those traders were primarily Afro-Guyanese, and I would go to work at the Hand-in-Hand Insurance Company in 84, and in 1987, I climbed pretty quickly. By 86, I was Barbados branch manager. By 87, I was back in Georgetown as marketing manager. And I met a gentleman, a young businessman called Norman Trott, still around. And he would be a cousin. You probably know Neville Trotz.
Yes.
Right. So Neville's cousin. And I met him, and he was interested talking to him because he moved into the house next door to me, and we chatted, and I said, I've seen him moving. I said, boy, what are you doing? He says, look, we're gonna gaff and we're gonna talk some business and so on when I come back. But I going to Canada, then I'm going to Japan, and then I'm going to Brazil, and I couldn't believe people could travel like this. So when he came back, because I questioned him, I said, well, before that, in order to try to pay for law school, I had actually tried to export pine and limes to Barbados, fly up. But the flight used to get in, I think, on Thursday or Friday. And David, by Monday, the lime and pine in the sunlight is starting to rot. I got to jump in a minibus now, go to every hotel and supermarket. I make a loss, but I end up buying some car tires at the time to ship back to Guyana just to break even. Okay. So anyway, so now I start to question the guy, and he said, well, look, I bring this stuff in and that stuff in to sell. And so I said, give me some of them things, let me sell. And that was the start. So that by, it was a time that, even though I was earning a good salary, I think my ambition was more than my position. so I wanted some more, and I was looking at young Afro-Guyanese men, 2Js who on Regent Street, the hardware store.
Mhm.
Those were some of the people that were in business, and I'm looking at them. Wilfred Branford,
Yes.
Car Care, Bransville Apartments, and so on. You're watching these guys, and these guys are starting to make moves. And you say, hey, I want to make some moves too. So eventually, I left the job and worked on building business, and then FedEx came along in 1993, and it grew from there. But it was a case that I wanted, and I wanted the independence, because at the time the corporate world was a little when I said difficult, I remember I used to act every year as the life manager. And this one year I was acting in 5 positions. And but for about 3 years, every time the manager left, we used to be behind target. He would go away for about 6 weeks. When he come back, we ahead of target. So a whispering campaign started, how is it that Smiles leave the company behind target? By the time he come back, Terrence got the company ahead of target. So he started to get a little, panicky about it. And I'll never forget, when he came back, he had left a list of 10 things for me to do, and maybe number 10 wasn't done. So he sent me a memo. And I went to Georgetown Club that day with the late Debbie Barker, whose husband, Steve, sadly passed away today.
Oh, my.
And yeah. And so on the way back, so while I was there, I saw my general manager, and I said, you see what this fella wrote to me? He said, yeah. He said, answer him. I said, I ain't got time to answer. I said, you write here and answer. I have no time with that. I said, you know all the work that I did. I have no time with it. And we drove back, and as we were turning Church Street, I'll never forget, we're turning Church Street, turning out of Carmichael Street into Church Street. And I looked up at the hand-in-hand building. It's in front of me. And it was October 31st, 1990. And a thought came to me. It said, look, you got to give 3 months leave, 3 months notice if you resign, right? But you got 1 month leave. So if you resign today, your last working day is the 31st of December, 1990. That sounds auspicious, going to write your resignation. Actually, I didn't have any idea what was going to happen. It wasn't that, I was so solidly entrenched in business already. I was doing business, working, doing business, but it wasn't so solidly entrenched in business that, that it was not without any fear or apprehension. But I went in, wrote the resignation, and I've been unemployed since then.
In case you're just joining us, this is a special program tonight. Dr. Terrence Campbell is here. And those of you who had not known of Terrence Campbell before certainly became quite famous over the last couple of weeks. Maybe we've gone into months after he dared to stand up to the powers that be and to raise the question of the Natural Resource Fund and how the government has been treating with that institution and our oil money that has come in to that institution. And especially for the young people here, every year, Ipadaji asks me to speak to young people. They have a kind of youth entrepreneurship forum that they hold every year, and they ask me to speak on the history of entrepreneurship in among African Guyanese, and I usually cite that period that Terrence spoke about, the trading period, the period when African Guyanese went into trading. And I usually challenge the young people to look at African Guyanese businesses today, and invariably you'll see that most of them would have had their origins. I didn't know that Terrence had his origins in that period. And so this is a revelation. I want especially you young people here to digest what Dr. Campbell just said. It wasn't easy sailing. And entrepreneurship, like any endeavor in life, is not easy sailing. All right, you have to go through the process, sometimes up, sometimes down, and so I hope it's a teaching moment, as most of our programs are. Terrence, if we can now move to the Natural Resource Fund, you are on that. Is it a committee? Is it
Investment committee?
Investment committee, and you were nominated there by
The leader of the opposition.
the leader of the opposition. How long have you been on that committee?
July. I was nominated in, I think, around October 2023. And maybe with good reason, the government sat on that nomination until around June, July. I actually had my first meeting in July.
And what is the remit of that committee?
The remit of that committee is really to advise the board, provide input to the board on its investment mandate, provide some guidance to the board in terms of how the funds can be invested safely, with good return, and in compliance with the Act. Because the Act is very specific, especially at this stage, in terms of what investments can and cannot be made.
And so July to now, that's what, 7 and 5, 12?
Probably about 6 months, yeah.
About 6 months.
Yeah.
Now, so in the 6 months, tell us what struck you when you went on to that committee, the 1, 2, or 3 things that struck you about the workings of that committee.
The committee is a decent committee at the level of form, but not at the level of substance. And I'll tell you that I spent some time advocating for constitutional reform prior to 2020 because I anticipated some of the things that happened in 2020 and onwards. And I was hoping that constitutional reform could have precluded some of these things from taking place. And one of the things I argued back then is that the NRF should have been embedded in the Constitution, thus not allowing any government, be it a PPP government, a Heinz government, a coalition government, from playing politics, using it as a purse for political purposes, a slush fund. Unfortunately, that was not. I don't think I've been told that the PPP did not want to discuss it, but I don't believe enough was done. Maybe I don't know enough, but what we have, so I never really looked at the act the original act, because I figured as soon as the government changed, the act gonna be changed, and so said, so done. And once the act was changed, I just paid it not a lot of attention, just as a general news item. But once I was appointed to the committee, I decided, I'm going to have to take a deep dive in here. And what struck me is one of the things that the PPP had done is that they changed the withdrawal criteria with their first change of the Act in 2021. And then subsequently, in 2024, they went and they increased the amount of money that they can withdraw. So basically, in any single year, the PPP can withdraw 95 plus, for now, of receipts into the fund. What that then means, now the general idea of a sovereign fund, it's kind of like your 403B, I guess that as a professor you would have here in the US.
Right.
Or for those who are not in the teaching, 401k, that you build it up during your work life, right? And so when you retire, it feeds you. It keeps you going, right? The investment will take care of you. So the general idea of a fund, a sovereign wealth fund, is similar, that you build it up and then to the point that it will then be able to take care of the needs of a country. Now, practically, Guyana has a number of immediate needs that we cannot afford to put aside every single cent of our revenue. But the first thing that shocked me is that we were drawing down 95% of it. I dare say, David, that governments in Guyana, and something we have to be very careful, are not judged by the same yardstick. Because as much as I was a critic of the coalition government, if the coalition government was in power and drawing down 95% of the fund, there would have been protests on the streets. It's not the same yardstick. So that was the first part of it. The second part was the act is particularly strict. It says, well, look, if the core fund, which is the interest that you're building up and so on every year, and that 5% that's left back, if that does not exceed 500 million, then you can only invest in safe investments, which currently means federal overnight funds or U.S. It doesn't have to be U.S. federal overnight funds or U.S. Treasury bills or bonds, but it has to be of that level of safety, that risk profile. So it has to be absolutely safe. And so once that is the criteria for investing the funds, there's not really a lot for the investment committee to do other than to have a chat. Hey, what's going on in the world today? How many times you think the Feds are going to have a rate cut this year? Oh, inflation is moving up. Maybe they'll only cut once. They're not going to cut twice. All right. So what are we going to do? Are we going to put the money back in federal overnight funds? There's not really, at the end of the day, there's not much to do. But it's not only about exceeding that 500 million, because we're at a point where we're going to exceed the 500 million on what's called the core fund. The act also says that if the fund does not exceed 3 times the amount authorized by Parliament for withdrawal, right? So Parliament is authorized to withdraw based on last year, 2.5 billion this year. So that core fund, the fund in total, not the core fund now, would have to exceed 7.5 billion before you can move out of safe investments and maybe start to look at some equities, some safe equities to get a higher return for the nation's funds. As of the end of December, the fund was just about 3 billion. And we're going to draw down 2.5 in this year, right? We're not gonna get that much back, because I don't know if you paid attention to the budget, but next year we only getting 10. We jumping from 43.6% growth,
yes,
down to 10. I think 10.6.
Yes,
right. And one of the reasons for that is the One Guyana FPSO. It's not going to come on stream until towards the end of the year. So basically, the same production that you had going in 2024 is the same production you got going in 2025. But oil prices, global supply, and the Minister of Finance has admitted this, that global supply of oil is going to exceed demand, and prices are likely to fall to about $71. So therefore, the revenues to Guyana from oil are not going to grow that much in 2025. And it's one sign that we're becoming an oil-dependent economy. 43.6% growth 2024, 10.6% growth in 2025, and all because oil price is going to fall. So the growth, any future growth, what it seems like is that future growth is only going to come from additional production, because we are entering a phase. We're entering a phase where oil prices, and nothing is guaranteed, but oil prices are likely to fall. We got President Trump is telling the guys in Ukraine and Russia, hey, y'all fix that situation over there. Once that is fixed, we should see some ease in terms of oil price. He's also saying here in the US, drill, baby, drill.
Drill, baby, drill.
Right. So when he says drill, baby, drill, I know he spoke to MBS in Saudi Arabia today, but when he says drill, baby, drill, MBS is likely to retaliate and drop his price, because he will want to put U.S. producers under. The Saudi Arabians, I think, got a break-even price of $9 per barrel. So he's going to want to say, I got to put some pressure on these people. I got to make the economics of oil a little difficult. So we could be entering some choppy waters in terms of oil prices. There always something, another shock could always come. A war could break out someplace. A trade route could be disturbed someplace. But as we sit here today, it seems like a downward trajectory for oil prices. And so that is going to have its impact on the Guyana economy. So when we are, let's go back to where we were. Yes. When we are depleting the fund at the rate that we're depleting, it will be a long time before, even though we've crossed the $500 million with the core fund, in terms of the total fund, for us to have 3 times the rate of depletion, that's going to take quite a few years. So basically, at the investment committee, it's about going, sitting down, having a gaffe, talking about world economic events, and then saying, yes, let's put the money back in U.S. Treasury bills and Fed overnight deposits. That's it. And this is the reason that I've said it's a white elephant. And I'm not trying to disparage committee members or the skill set or anything, but I'm saying that in the context in which the committee has to operate, it effectively is a white elephant.
It is essentially a white elephant.
Yeah.
Dr. Terrence Campbell here tonight. We are talking about the Natural Resource Fund and his role as a member of the investment committee. Those of you who are just joining us, welcome to the program. I see some new friends here tonight. Clark Zuckerberg, my old friend from way back, welcome tonight. Emily, how are you? Welcome, Gary. Well, Gary, you did predict last night, Gary, that Jagdio is going to end this press conference early today, take a nap, because he's going to be on this program. And I see Mr. Jagdio here on this program. Mr. Jagdio, welcome, Mr. Vice President, to Politics 101. I know what brings you here. Now, Terrence, you shock Guyana when you ask, well, you raise...
Hold on. Listen, we are civil people.
Yes.
And Facebook tells me today is Mr. Jagdio's birthday. And notwithstanding the fact that he and I will not see politically eye to eye, if he is on the program, let me wish him a happy birthday. We were all born, Nigel Hughes and him born in January and February. We're all 64 people. Happy birthday, Mr. Vice President.
Mr. Vice President, I want to echo the sentiments of Dr. Terrence Campbell and to wish you happy birthday. And remember, you are 61 today. So when you cussing Clive Thomas say he's a geriatric, you get in there, you know, pig ask him, where you mouth land? So he said, wait, you turn a comb. Terrence, you shook Guyana when you raised the question of the government drawing out money from the fund without accounting for the money, without saying what you're using this money for. Mr. Vice President fired back and said words to the effect that they don't have to. It will be cumbersome and whatever else he said.
Balkanized.
Yes.
A term used in finance, but more in the political realm. A good term for our Politics 101 class.
Now, I mean, for those of us who know something about economics and political economy, say, well, wait a minute, why we never thought of this before? What drove you to come public with that observation?
Well, let me say, David, that I didn't come public. That wasn't my first step. I'm not one seeking attention at all.
Yeah.
My first step was to raise it. So the requests for withdrawal usually passes through the board. I can tell you that I have declined board positions. And there is even a company that I started in which I'm a shareholder that I have stepped away from the board because my early training, as I mentioned, was in insurance. And I'm a chartered insurance practitioner, even to this day. And there's something called directors and officers liability. Essentially, that if you sit on a board, you have a responsibility, right, to act professionally, and you can be sued. You can be sued if you don't exercise due care as a director. And it's from that standpoint that I felt that having seen the document for withdrawal, that it was not in sufficient detail. To my mind, even somebody running a cake shop would have a little more detail if, a family member asks for some money, right? Come, sign this thing here. You're going and buy butter, come. Just write down in that book, you're taking $100 you're going and buy butter. Or you're taking $100, you're going and buy flour or rice or whatever. There is absolutely no detail on that withdrawal instrument, at least the ones that I saw from July and October. Effective December, I no longer see it. Right. I no longer see it. And I don't think that is an accident. Let me say, it is interesting, a read of the budget. As I read the budget, I came across the minister, the honorable minister, speaking about the funds from LCDS 2009. And I'm not deeply versed in the LCDS, but that I suspect is the Norwegian funds, the fund from Norway.
Right.
And LCDS 2030, which are probably the funds from the sale of carbon credits with Hess Corporation and so on. And the vice president could text something if I'm going wrong here. But what was more important? He said, we spent X amount, and I have a post on Facebook with it. I don't think the numbers are important. He said, X amount on drainage, sluice drainage, and irrigation. We spent another amount on solar power and so on. And I said to myself, how come the minister sees it fit to let the nation know how the funds from the LCDS, because there is a gap, there's a budget deficit. That budget deficit is then filled up, covered by NRF funds, LCDS funds, and so on. And here is the minister in the budget. And he is giving some account for how these funds have been spent. And not once. So he points out some drainage areas of drainage where they spent the money on solar. And then he goes on later on and he points out that so much of the 2030 LCDS funds have been shared with our Amerindian brothers and sisters. What is the difference between the LCDS funds and the NRF funds? Now, I'm not sure about what are the conditionalities regarding HES and the government and the sale of carbon credits. But if I recall well, the funds from Norway, they had conditionalities on what the investments that could be made with those funds. And I believe some of it had gone to the Amelia Falls thing. I think hydropower was okay for them to spend it on and so on. You couldn't just go and spend it as you like. You had to show how the funds from Norway were going to be spent. Now, I think there's a little bit of disrespect here. We're willing to respect the Norwegians, right?
Right.
In terms of how we spend the money that they give to us for maintaining our forest. But we're not willing to respect the people of Guyana with how we spend the oil money. The oil money does not belong to the PPP or the government of Guyana. It is the money of the people of Guyana. And it may be. I think the government is trading on this, that 70% of the people really don't really care about this as long as they get 100,000 here and so on. But there are enough of us who care about, we do not want to see Guyana become a Venezuela. Many years ago, as a young fella, I used to read Reader's Digest. There was a country called Nauru, I think. And they had guano, which is the bird droppings, and it was phosphate, and it was good for fertilizer and so on. And they grew to one of the richest countries in the world, people digging out all they want. Today is one of the poorest countries in the world. We do not want that. So we want to know how you are spending this money. First of all, for me personally, taking out 95% is ridiculous. The PPP before, I think under the 21 Act had a maximum of 80%. That has changed. They moved it up.
Yes.
They changed it. So I don't like it, but I am not Parliament. You know, we have a situation where, you know, winner take all, Parliament decides these things. It's not embedded in the Constitution. It can be changed. That's fine. But from Parliament says that it can only be used, the money can only be used for national priorities, or it can only be used for special projects in relation to major natural disasters. So in the same way, I am satisfied not about all of the LCDS money. And for those who are listening, when I say LCDS, low carbon development strategy. What he presented is not a full accounting. But what I'm saying is the same model can be pursued in relation to the NRF. It would be a matter of good governance. And to Mr. Jagdi, I want to say, when the government changes in October, November, December, we'll have good governance. We'll account to Parliament at the budget time as to how the NRF money is being spent. But it's a matter of good governance, regardless of which government is there. That you identify the projects that you're going to, you know already we're drawing down 2.4, 2.5 billion for 2025. Oh, show some respect to the citizens of this country and say, I'm going to spend it. And there are lots of confusion over the gas to energy. There's big arguments going on even today about whether there's been a feasibility study or not and so on. But at least say, listen, 900 million going to gas to energy. We're gonna put 200 million to the bridge over the Country River. Just tell us what are the national priorities, because we have not had a reason to use NRF funds for special projects in relation to natural disasters as yet, and I hope we never have to. But in relation to the other national development priorities, in this budget, it would have been good governance and good practice and good housekeeping. It is the type of thing. I hope Mr. Jagdu is still on. If the coalition government had done this, I can see him in his press conference, and for some reason, steam would be coming out his ears as he would thunder about the lack of accountability on this issue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if he's still listening, I say to him, sir, it's not too late. It's not too late. Show some respect for the citizens of Guyana and say, of the 2.5 billion, this is what we're going to be doing with it. And then when the end of the year comes, say, this is how we spent it. It's good housekeeping. The people of Guyana deserve this. So that was essentially what started a whole cycle that has gone crazy, in terms of arguments and debates between myself and those on the government side.
Dr. Terrence Campbell here tonight. I want to welcome all of you, including Vice President Jagdeo, who has joined us. Well, for the first time, he has made it known that he's with us here. Vice President, welcome. And as we said, happy birthday, because we are nice people and we are mannerly people. Both Terrence and I are country people. And we always say, when you come from the country, you must get manners, and so we welcome you, Terrence. You in the vice president response, and I remember watching him. He translated a comment that you made about a tendency of his to want his cake and eat it, basically. All right. And he translated that into a charge of racism against you, that you were talking him down because of his race. And I found that astounding coming from him. I know that we live in a country, once you say anything that sounds race, people say you're racial. You know, we get past that. But for someone of his station in life, I found it very, 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 very distasteful. But I want to get your response to it. Were you shocked when you heard him respond that way to what you said?
So I wasn't watching the press conference. Trying to think where I was. I might have been in Singapore or somewhere, and I got a message saying the vice president says you're racist. And I said, what? And so later that day, I think I decided, well, listen, I have to listen to this. And indeed, I was shocked that he jumped from my making a personal comment about him. And listen, the vice president is no wallflower. He has been in the political trenches of this country from certainly 1992 until now. So he's been in those political trenches for 32 plus years. And I think a comment like that, I didn't that way. I've been a businessman, and there are times when people tell you you're chicken in. Well, I'm no longer in the chicken business, and he likes to associate me with the chicken. But let me say this: in the chicken business, sometimes you go out and you want to be left alone. Somebody comes and say, "Man, I had this problem at your store, or this chicken ain't taste good," or And over time, I learned that listen to the problem, determine how to fix it and who got to be involved in fixing it. Share the information, get it done. You don't take it on personally, right? So, and even though I'm sitting outside of the political realm, I am taking political jobs, and I go take it on. One of let me tell you how bad this is, and I'm glad he's listening, because he has a very good friend, Robin Singh, who I went to the Marriott with two friends. We had a lovely time. We walking out. The girl said, "Come, let me sit down next to Santa and take a picture." they posted the picture. Within less than a minute, I guess, of their posting the picture, Robinson takes the picture, scratches out the girl's face, put it there, and says, "This is the face that that Santa makes when you ask him for a prostate," referring to the fact that I've been very public about the fact that I had prostate cancer and a radical prostatectomy, and so on. That is, and I want to say to Mr. Jagdeo, I'm glad he's on. I don't believe deep down that is the Guyana that you want. And certainly, let me tell you the reason that I speak out in the public domain and that I am willing to take the jobs that I take. Because it's not the Guyana that I want to see either. It doesn't matter who wins the election or who runs in it. What I want to see in Guyana, and I feel that notwithstanding anything else I've achieved in life, that my life would have been a waste if I leave Guyana in the same way that I met it. I came into this world in 1964 just like the vice president, less than a month after him. And I met Guyana with some warts and so on. And those warts have grown in number when they should have been reducing. And I want to see a more civilized Guyana. And I'm saying to the vice president that, let me take this opportunity to say, listen, the comment about looking for a prostate didn't bother me. I've been open. I've been open about my surgery. I even share a picture because I had a friend who turned up at the hospital and spent 17 hours with me. I'm not that person to share a hospital picture. But I felt that I needed to do it to say to my friend, you do not know how much I appreciated you doing this, right? So it's not a secret. And I shared every single detail, all my PSA readings. I know we're going off topic, but I shared it because I wanted to save lives. That somebody else might be going along the same track and they might see my story. And many people have reached out to me and asked me, "Bye, this is what happening," and so on. And we've been able to talk. Many of my friends have had this surgery. David, this is something that is an epidemic amongst Black men. I can tell you that it's about 12 or 13 people, close friends, maybe 5 or 6 of them who had that surgery after me in this year. And when they call me, I walk them through every single step. I said, this is what's going to happen. One of my friends, he was having a problem. He didn't know that he could use a pad after the Pampers before before that goes in 3 months. I sent him a link, said, this is what you got to buy. Right? I shared that. And yet one of the vice president's good friends would stoop to such a level. Let me say to him that if I have a friend going to that level, I would pull him up firstward. That's not the Guyana that I think you want or that I want. We need a more civilized Guyana.
Definitely, Dr. Terrence Campbell. Dr. Campbell, you went in the direction of the budget. You referenced the budget to make your point of the NRF. We want to go directly to the budget, and I want to first ask you your initial general response as you. I don't know if you listened to the 5-hour story. I didn't. But as you would have done an overview of the budget, what was your initial response?
And again, this is the vice president have grounded on this issue before publicly. For me, I see our oil money, our oil sector as winning the lottery. And it's an opportunity for us to put Guyana on a much better foundation for the future. So what I'm saying is that foundation is our non-oil economy, because they are, for those of you, and I guess you do it in politics too, but for those of us who are steeped in business, we one of the tools that we like to use is a SWOT, right? And they are threats to oil. There's the move towards renewables that might ease. We got President Trump pulling out of Paris Accord. In fact, today I was amused. He said that, in relation to the AI infrastructure they're going to put up, he have told them, put your electricity next to it. And he did say also, he said, as backup, we have good, clean coal. I never thought that I would hear that now, right? But so they might, the growth of renewables may be slowed under the Trump administration, but there's still a threat because a lot of the world have not deviated from that path of renewables. The Chinese are producing EVs like crazy. And then there's the drill baby drill story of whereby we might see oil prices, especially if the war stops in Ukraine, if the Palestinians and Israelis find some kind of peace, we may see $50 a barrel oil. And that's going to present some challenges to us in Guyana. As a businessman, I fear about my investments in Guyana, a lot of which is with it's an age thing, a life cycle thing. So moving from 50s into 60s, I want to, even though I'm about to launch a new business that's going to go across the Caribbean, and that should be launched in another 4 months. I'm trying to move away from operational businesses, 500 employees and the headache that comes with that, and move into more passive investments like real estate. So if I'm investing in real estate in Guyana and there's a shock to the oil price, then the first things the oil majors, Exxon, they're gonna do, and the contractors say, hey, maybe we'll cut some headcount on the expat staff. And so those people who I'm depending on to pay me my rent, they're gone. What's going to happen in such a scenario, some people who are borrowing to make real estate investments are not going to be able to pay their mortgages and whatever loans they got, right? Properties are going to come on the market. Real estate values can tumble. You're not a businessman if you don't plan for contingency and you don't have a worst case scenario. So I'm concerned that we must develop the non-oil economy, and we have some challenges. And here's one of the challenges. Basically right now in Guyana, we have a largely uneducated workforce, right? And when you got an uneducated workforce, then the industries that are perhaps easier for you to enter would be labor-intensive industries, right? However, there's a conundrum here. The oil economy, the oil sector is causing an escalation in the cost of living in Guyana. And what that has done, that has led to increased wage demands. So now I don't think I wrote something in the newspaper about it. We have 50% secondary school. Let me just drag this home here for a second. We got 50% secondary school dropouts, right? Of those we got 7% primary school dropouts. That's 57. We got 43 left. Of the 43 left, less than 40% actually get 5 subjects including maths and English, right? So that basically, in terms of a proper matriculation, it's only about 16%. And we have about 15 to 18,000, it varies, who write common entrance every year. So it's about 15 to 18,000 becoming adults every single year. That's a recipe for disaster. That means that about we're probably in the range, and we see its effects sometimes with crime. And I'm conflicted with the crime. Sometimes the guys are shot and killed, and you say, well, why are they going on the people and they're harassing, kill the people? And then the other side of me, I'm telling you, the other side of me, but we failed them. We failed them in the families, we failed them in the schools, we failed them as a society. right? So we have this uneducated workforce that's now demanding higher wages. And what that has done, that means that a lot of the labor-intensive industries that we might have had a competitive advantage, we no longer can. And Mr. Jagdeo is having problems in the sugar industry finding labor. They're moving to mechanization. He is saying that he's going to get a 115% increase in sugar production in 2025 because of mechanization, because he can't find labor. He quarreled about the way the coalition dealt with the sugar industry. And I will say I agree with him on the issue of the severance, that the severance should have been paid and paid immediately. But however, he is having problems in that labor-intensive industry. The minister in his presentation spoke about business process outsourcing, right? This is call centers and so on. And the government is making a lot of investment in business process. But what did we see in 2024? We saw ITEL and we saw another one. I forgot the name. Two of Midas. ITEL and Midas. We saw them close up shop and leave. Because one, they got quality of workforce issue, right? We got some work ethic issues, and we got demand for increasing wages. So it becomes, we still got some, the VP will probably say, hey, Terrence, what happened to Teleperformance and Qual Fund? Yeah, they're still around. But increasingly, it's going to become a challenge because as the oil sector takes off, real estate has gone crazy, rent has gone crazy. There's no way that the inflation rate is at 2.8 and 2.9 being quoted in the budget. Throw that out the door, right? So we have this situation now that for a lot of sectors for which we may have had a competitive advantage, we can't. We move at the levels, and some of people send me, including in the last week, say, look, Guyana's per capita GDP, per capita income is $20,000 US. I throw that thing out the door because per capita income comes from it's basically GDP divided by population. And our GDP is distorted because in simple terms, it's the final goods and services produced in the country. But all of the oil is taken into account in the computation of that GDP. But we know that a huge portion, this is why you got the whole big argument of renegotiation, a huge portion of that revenue from oil is being, it's for the benefit of China National Oil Operating, Hess and Exxon, right? They're the ones who carry that away, not the population of Guyana. So the per capita income figure and the GDP figure is artificially inflated. And so when the minister, again, and this has another important point, because the minister is quoting that Guyana has one of the lowest debt to GDP ratios, but it's based on a distortion. We are in a unique position, yes, with a high GDP, but there's so much leakage from the economy that goes to the oil majors that it does not reflect the reality on the ground. When somebody tell you, hey, you walk into a country and it's 20,000, the per capita income is $20,000, and you walk into Guyana, there's a disconnect immediately. And the disconnect is because so much of that GDP flows externally. So anyway, coming back to where I am, this is what bothers me. Coming back to where we are, we now have demands for higher wages, a workforce that is not educated. So we're ruled out of labor-intensive stuff. We're starting to move into the higher order. We kind of getting ruled out even of the call center, which is not that very complicated. At the levels of income that will soon be demanded, justifiably, because people gotta live. At the levels of income that people will soon demand in Guyana, really and truly in other sister countries, those would be the type of jobs for that level of income would be higher jobs that require a certain level of education and skills and so on. And we are not preparing. I know, and the government has this gold program, and I wrote, well, not extensively because it's a newspaper, but I wrote about this gold program. I am not happy with it. The issue, and if Mr. Jagdeo is on, and I will say to him,
he's still there.
I will say to him this. I never did a first degree. I studied for the Chartered Insurance Institute exams. And there are many people that I know who never did a first degree. They studied for Chartered Association of Certified Accountants exams. They studied for Chartered Accounting exams. They studied for Chartered Institute of Management Accounting exams and so on. What I really want to say to him is that remote education is not something new. So I have no issue with the gold project itself. I have an issue, and I'm asking him that they should review it. Don't take everything that comes that's not supportive in a negative way. Review it. The British have an open university that has standards. And if we're to go back, David, and forgive me, VP, for this name, but Forbes Burnham did a BA external from University of London.
Right.
Robert Mugabe did his LLB and some external degrees from the University of London. The Nelson Mandela did external studies from the University of London. I think Desmond Hoyt as well. Yeah. I was shocked one day when my old Mrs. Carmen Jarvis told me she did BA external from London.
Yeah, my mentor, UC Kwayana.
There you go. So, so remote education, which is now mainly online, is just an evolution of remote education, which has existed for more than a century.
Yes.
Right? But let us choose institutions with standards so that we make sure that our people and our workforce is fit for purpose. And so I did not see enough. Those are some of the things that I wanted to see a strategic approach. How are we going to move and solidify the gains that the oil sector can potentially give to us at this point? I didn't get enough of that coming out. And I thought it was a bit haphazard too. And I'll tell you something. And again, with for example, the cash grant, the government came out one day, they said, listen, it's $200,000 per household. 2 days later, some noise in the place, they came out and they said, listen, $100,000 per citizen. And Mr. Jagdeo, I haven't got mine. I don't want to join the line, but tell me how it could go to. But I read the budget presentation. Now, listen to this, David. One of the measures, and I felt deflated at the end because I'm reading all this. It's really like a political campaign. Oh, from 2015 to 2020 was this, you know. It's out of 2015 to 2020, lackluster growth, 3.6. I made a note of it, 3.6%. Dr. Singh did not point out that in 2013 we had 3.7 growth, 2014 3.9. What had been driving the economy? And some people said drugs were driving the economy, and I defended the PPP. I said, no, man, it wasn't drugs. What was driving the Guyana economy? In 2008, you had a financial crisis in the United States, right? Credit default swaps and all these things. And because of that, a lot of investors rushed to gold, and the gold price went crazy. And that drove the Guyana economy up until 2014. By 2015, we had a slowdown, and economic growth in Guyana was 0.7%. And again, the opposition got to be firm. They've got to point these things out. The coalition government inherited a slowing economy in 2015, right? And so this thing about saying only 3.6, I'm not saying they didn't do things wrong. I was perhaps second only to Mr. Jagdeo as a critic of the coalition government. But we must admit that at least they kept things kind of stable coming along. They could have done more, right? But they kept things kind of stable coming up to 2020. We are in this phase now where the minister comes out with a measure, one of his measures. He says there are two tax rates. And this is why I think sometimes, and maybe Mr. Jack, you're going to share some licks with them after this, because they ain't thinking things through. I have read that budget. He said, in it, it says there were two levels of taxation. One was 28 and one was 40, right? Depending on your level of income. The budget says the 28 goes down to 25. It doesn't say anything about the 40. This is the minister's speech, right? This is the minister's speech, David. I saw some accounting firms issued a summary of the budget and said the new tax rates are 28 and 40. The next day, minister issues a memo, a statement saying, no, the 40 gone down to 35. I mean, what negligence is this? Who wrote the speech? Who reviewed the speech? Was it that night, off of the NRF money, they drink some Eldorado 25-year-old and then decide to drop it from 40 to 25? Where did this come from? Listen, to anybody who got just a little bit of sense, and that's all I got, I ain't got much. Anybody who got a little bit is like, what's this? This is haphazard. This is the national stage. It is not in the budget. I have read the budget from start to finish, and it's not there. And so, and I just cite this as an example that I don't think that there is enough analysis. And there's a lot, oh, we're going to spend this and this and this. And then they give a set of measures, but they don't say, well, we considered this and we thought this, we decided to go this way. This is what we expect. You know, and there is some of that goes on even in between. You know, they talk about agro-processing and they create 869 new products, 50 new agro-processing facilities, how much Guyana shop and so on. What I know about business and what I know about physical fitness is the same. What you measure, you improve. I'm a man go up on the scale every day to make sure I do within a certain range. Don't tell me, don't give me all of this fluff. This is not an exercise in poetry. A budget is not an exercise in poetry. Tell me, what are the revenues that are being generated by these things that you are doing? Budget is about numbers. It's finance people dealing with this. Tell me what you're generating, right? Tell me what you expect to generate in this new year. And when you come next year, tell me how you did. And tell me why why you didn't meet it, or why you exceeded it, and what's going to happen the next year. I was disappointed. Let me say this. Dr. Singh is a bright fellow. Very bright fellow. But a failure on the budget.
Fairly on the budget. You heard it here tonight from Dr. Terrence Campbell. Good night to you, Egerton David. Good night to you, Norman Brown. And Norman, you're asking, why is Mr. Jagdeo being mentioned? And Mr. Jagdeo is on the program tonight. Norman, it's his birthday. And I think some of our viewers last night, when I announced that Dr. Campbell would be on, they said, Jagdeo is going to be on. And lo and behold, just after the program started, here is Dr. Jagdeo, Dr. Jagdeo, Dr. Jagdeo on the program tonight. Welcome to all of you. Jacqueline Argyle, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. And all of you, some of you all been skulking. And I thank you very much, Terrence, for bringing them being out to class tonight. Some of them I see in class for a couple of mornings. Well, you all been skulking. I'm glad I bring Terrence on. There are some requests. People say, well, after this, I should have Carl Greenidge and so on. This is what I like about my countrymen and women. You all in front of the game. Thank you all so much. Terrence, you're a business person. And one of the things, and I assume that you would have had in the budget is a business. From a business standpoint, what's in there for business?
Not a lot. You know, so let's look at some of the measures, for example, that are specifically, and I don't have it was too much printing. I can't afford to print 100 something pages. But if we look at, what I remember offhand, let's say the poultry sector. And man, how long are we going? All night?
That's time. They come to pass a long time.
I said poultry sector, and I realized that, listen, we could talk till tomorrow morning. Around 2003, 2004, the PPP government placed 100% tariff on imported chicken. And the only way you could import chicken is by a license. It was a good move. It was a move that was going to allow us to develop our local poultry industry. The Jamaicans have done a phenomenal job with it, David. Those Jamaican companies, Jamaica Broiler Breeders, they have grown so big from that protection that they actually own poultry processing facilities and feed mills and so on. Don't hold me to which one it is. In the US, that they've actually expanded and gone abroad with some of these things from the protection. It was a good move. So, Mr. Jagdeo, I'm a businessman. I'll give you your jacket. Come 2020, the president came in and there were challenges driving up, especially after COVID. Remember, we had high inflation, cost of food items going through the roof, supply chain disruptions, and so on. And the President Ali came and he said, listen, we're going to try planting corn and soybean here. And they made some investments. Good move. What has happened since then? We've had, and in the budget again, we've had the minister talking about vaccination. But I don't know how we're talking, but unless somebody fooling, the vaccination have not worked. Farmers are punishing. Farmers have had high mortality. Farms are closing. I've had people reach out to me and say, Mr. Campbell, thanks so much for speaking up for us. I have lost 5 million. I have tagged the ministry. I haven't gotten any help. They send me pictures of the dead birds and all these things, right? Now, so what the minister said in the budget speech about spending money on vaccine, forget it. It's not working. In the interim, and listen, sometimes I got an employee, right? And that employee may have a bobcat. And I might say, all right, whenever I need a bobcat, you could bring your bobcat and I'm going to pay you. It don't work out nice, you know. When you bring the bobcat, if somebody else bring the bobcat, you make sure the bobcat do the work in a timely manner and gone. When it's he bobcat, he could stay for the job 2-3 days. You understand? VP, this is the problem with the importation of the chicken. Because it has gone crazy. They did a good thing. They said you could import chicken because the IBH, inclusion body hepatitis, is decimating the farmers, and you're not going to be able to meet. And it's politics. They want to keep the cost of living low. Chicken is a staple in Guyana. There's chicken and rice and so on. Them are some of the things I try to make money off in my life, right? So those are staples in Guyana. You can't let the price go crazy. All right. So they said, now, when this chicken come in, we're going to give it to the farmers, and farmers could sell it so they could still make a little bit of money while we deal with this problem. The farmers start making some money from the imported chicken. And they're a group in the Ministry of Agriculture. And the VP said that he going to deal with any corruption and so on. I could use the word corruption in here?
Yes. Not
you
banned.
Sure? You sure? It's not banned in this house.
Not banned
in Politics 101.
Never.
The people say you can deal with the corruption. So what they did, what has happened now, is that this imported chicken now is going, people who had nothing to do. They got a company, they got meat center and so on, they get in the, I won't call the name, because all of them now buying this chicken. This imported chicken. Let me give a reference. There was a time in the early 2000s when one of the richest men in the country was a man named Dio Singh. He owned KFC and Pizza Hut, and he was the biggest importer of chicken. This importing of chicken got big money in it. So now, the big money with this imported chicken. So nobody's paying attention to the disease that is ravaging the poor farmers, right? The reason I went into that is that one of the things that they did, they said, listen, we could get accelerated, the poultry farmers could get accelerated depreciation. That gonna work out for Bounty and the big guys who preparing fancy accounts and got chartered accountants and accounting firms doing them things and so on. The majority of farmers doing $3,000 and $4,000 who just set up a pen and hustling with some waterers and so on and having their own labor. Accelerated depreciation ain't helping them in no way, because they're not even filling out a final accounts when the year finish to put depreciation inside of it. That is no relief to them. Let me give you another example. They say VAT on generators. That will perhaps help the small man who decide he wants a generator. It will become a little cheaper by, roughly 14%, which is the VAT he doesn't have to pay. But it's not anything for the big companies, because when whatever they pay for the VAT, more than likely they sell it, whatever they're doing, they're selling for VAT. Right? They're charging VAT on the service or the product, and they're just deducting it anyway. So the VAT is really not an expense. So this is some of the reasons why I'm saying that some of the measures there are not of much benefit to business people. Not much benefit to business people.
Dr. Terrence Campbell here tonight, and we've been talking about the Natural Resource Fund and his position on that, and then we pivot to the budget. Let me ask you this. There's been a lot of talk about a universal basic income in Guyana. The PPP is giving out these cash grants and little thing here and so on. And some of us have been saying, look, that is not doing it. Perhaps we should move towards, not perhaps, that we should move towards a universal basic income. I would like to get your take on it, because you're a businessman, but you're also an economist of sort and thing. What do you think about the introduction of a universal basic income in Guyana?
In context is everything, and they say one size don't fit all.
Right.
And going back to the old issue, one of the problems that we have in Guyana, again, is the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
I am all for providing a floor, so to speak, right, for our people. But I would also like to tie it. So the vice president has a $40,000 a month for 10 days work, right? Part-time employment. I don't like it. I know, VP, let me say something. A friend of mine say, you hate Barajag. I don't hate Barajag, do you? If I see the VP, listen, if I saw the VP, I digress here for one second. If I saw him tonight, I would knock a glass. He got by me 25-year-old rum, though. I ain't drinking nothing cheaper than that for me. But let me say this. And the reason I'm saying it, that $40,000 a month, I'd like to tie it to manpower development. I have a problem with it. But I'd like to tie it to some kind of manpower development. So you get $40,000. If you go and find a job, we add it to your workplace. If you don't find a job, then I want to tie that you got to go some course that I provide in. I got satellite institutions and so on. Because think about it. The scenario that I painted for you, David, of the secondary dropouts, the failures at CSEC, it's been going on for decades. It's been going on for decades. So we have a huge adult population. And I remember, and you should remember this too, there was an organization called the Adult Education Association.
Right. Yes.
And I remember that I have friends of mine who, when they didn't have the right teacher in school, they used to go to the AE class, even though they're small. And that's how they passed the GCs in those days, right? We need to up the skill set. We need to upskill. In some cases, maybe with the sugar workers, we need to reskill. And so I just don't want to give a universal basic income, but I want to tie it.
So it's conditional. It's conditional.
I want to make it conditional on upskilling or reskilling.
Right.
And one of the things that I put out into the public domain, and I hope that somebody accepts it, is that we are not all made to become doctors and lawyers and so on. In some countries like South Korea, which has had significant economic development, the technical people are held in esteem. And so I know people who ain't got head for some English literature and so on. But I tell you, technically, they're solid. And I think that we should, rather than them dropping out of school, we need to have vocational secondary schools. Vocational secondary schools, because I think the Caribbean has a Caribbean vocational qualifications and so on. And even if they don't have, the British got some and so on. And we say, yes, we're streaming you for this. So when they leave school, they're highly skilled, right? And national service seems to have bad connotations. Well, if we're going to do it with the national service, let's do it from a secondary school. In the olden days, growing up, you had welfare inspector, school inspector, wherever you come and you're in school, it's trouble coming down to your parents and so on. We need to stop this dropout thing. And those who don't want to go the traditional academic route, they need to be in vocational secondary school. It has got to be, if we want to fix Guyana, it has got to be, listen, VP, forget the Ministry of Finance, forget the Ministry of Natural Resources, forget the Ministry of Agriculture. Your most important ministry is the Ministry of Education.
Good evening to you, Minister Jordan. And Minister Jordan, you owe us a visit on this program. Just name your date, your day, and we are ready for you. Winston Jordan, a comment there on screen. Minister Jordan, I would like to have you on this program for us to talk about the budget and related issues. Please give me your day and time, your day and date, and we will get going.
Let me see, 1 second. I see Minister Jordan saying it's a fallacy about reduction in VAT. I don't think we discussed reduction in VAT. But let me say that I agree with him in what he's saying. It wouldn't be passed on to the consumer, because I was a businessman who charged VAT, and when VAT reduced, I never pass on. And let me go on to say that as a business, listen, I can be a capitalist and yet I like to describe myself as a benevolent capitalist, but I'm a capitalist still. Whenever Minister Jordan, you or even VP Jagdeo give back pay, that's the time I used to choose to put my increase in prices, because I could slip it in easy at that point in time. So you're absolutely right but we weren't discussing a reduction in VAT. And I have always, the second point is, I've always described Guy Oil not only as a upstream, downstream distributor of oil, but as a regulator. And we've seen this time and time again. I've seen where the oil price drop, and in those days, Shell and Texaco refusing to bring the prices down. And Gaia would get a long, long line. Everybody avoid them until they bring the price down. So indeed, I agree with you with the comment that you got there. I like to describe Gaia as a regulator.
Terrence, before we go, I can't not ask you this question. The chairman of GCOM has just announced that GCOM would not be using biometrics at the coming election because there is not enough time left and all the stuff that come with that. What are your thoughts on the use of biometrics for elections in Guyana?
In elections, every election since I've been an adult has been fraught with problems and questions about who win, who you know. I think all parties have a duty to employ whatever technology they could to reduce questions concerning the outcome of any election. I believe that there was deliberate delay in making a decision on the issue of biometrics. It wasn't raised yesterday. Discussion about this started a while ago. I think that once the last election was done, and that was a fiasco, I think GCOM had a responsibility to sit down and plan and request funds, whatever was necessary, to ensure that the next election, this 2025 election, would be one that was going to be run off and leave little question. And perhaps there will always be question in our plural society about the outcome of any election. But they had a duty to sit down and strategically plan to up the ante in terms of technology. Perhaps, David, what is happening at GCOM is a sign of an uneducated workforce at the commission level.
And on that note, Dr. Terrence Campbell, thank you very much. We have been going at it now for 1 3/4 hours. And I want to thank you so much for accepting the invitation to come on to this program. It was a request from a couple of prominent people in the society who called me a couple of days ago and said, you have to have Terrence Campbell onto the program. I got in touch with you and you accepted, and I want to thank you so much. And judging from the turnout class tonight, right? Some people bring in their own bench and their own chairs and so on. And some people haven't been to class. Some of them haven't paid a school fee, but they're here tonight. I want to thank you so much. Before you go, your closing thoughts, anything.
You know, it's interesting that you said they brought their own bench, and so I will close on that note, and especially if the VP is still on.
Let me see. Yes,
when I was going to do common entrance, my mom took me to a bottom house school, a man by the name of Isaac Henry, and he taught. I speak of him often because they're old people that I've never met. There's a man named Professor Ewart Thomas, who was a retired professor at Stanford. Yes. I never met, but Isaac Henry taught Ewart. He taught me, and he taught people younger than me. So I'll use that to say that society can never adequately compensate. And I got this in my first doctoral class years ago. Society can never adequately compensate the good teacher because they will impact thousands. Mm-hmm. But you gave me my last thought when you talk about the bench. So when we went to Mr. Henry's school, he says, I can't take him in. I ain't got no furniture. My mother said, I can bring a desk and a chair. So we took the desk and a chair. And I say this to say that we build in hospitals, we build in schools, but it's not the building that's important. We got to focus on the teacher. We sat in a bottom house. I don't think the world was as warm as it was today. But we sat under that bottom house, under his house, went to school, and passed common entrance. And many of us did fairly well, right? It was about the teacher and not about the building. So let me drive home again what I've said throughout. We have got to focus on our Guyanese citizens, our manpower, our human resources, and everything should be geared towards developing them and preparing ourselves for the day when oil is no longer king, and to give future generations a stable society and a stable economy and a place where Guyanese will be happy to stay and live. I'm losing one of my senior managers, maybe 20-something years. She's in her 50s and she's moving to the States. You know, we got to correct this. The brain drain is still going on. And for as long as it's going on, it's a national problem. It's not a PPP problem, not a coalition problem. It's our problem. And we must be willing. We must be willing. This has been a deficit in Guyana. We must be willing to sit with each other, talk, share ideas, appreciate the ideas, forget who it's coming from. You know, don't kill the message because of the messenger. And move Guyana forward. And that's the note on which I want to finish my Politics 101 class. I will be checking anxiously on Schoology to see what my grade is from you, Professor.
Terrence, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It was an honor, and I thoroughly enjoyed doing this interview. As I always say to my guests, right, this is a journey. This is what we in academia call public scholarship. All right, and what better time to do it at this time as our Guyana is making this transition. Perhaps we're not sure transition to what yet, but we know that we are in transition.
Yeah.
Transition to what will be determined by us ultimately. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Terrence Campbell, our special guest tonight, and I want to thank you all for coming out in your numbers tonight. Keep coming back. We're going to try to get Winston Jordan on. Their request for Kyle Greenidge, so that y'all are in economist mode. So I'm going to try to get them on. I will try to get the politicians on, Nigel Hughes and Aubrey Norton at some point to give their take on the budget. So we have quite a full couple of weeks coming up. Again, thank you all very much. And I'll see you all tomorrow night. It's Friday night. Friday night, last case night. The night when you take your little talks, but you come to class before you take your talks. See you all tomorrow night.